The Gamestation Go is a handheld that contains over 100 built-in games. While it is a decent console, it does have some major issues. The TV output is terrible, there's random emulation issues, and the trackball is awful. But recently, there's been an update that addresses some of these problems. I'm going to show you how to get the most out of your Gamestation Go. What's going on? It's Podrez coming at you with another video. Okay, we're going to be talking about some updates about the Gamestation Go. If that sounds interesting to you, hit that subscribe button right there. I'm trying to see if it's possible to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Only you can help me get there. If you want to be a part of a family-like community, just go to discord.podrez.net. I'll also put a link in the description. Alright, let's see if we can improve this product. For those who don't know, the Gamestation Go is a handheld that comes with over 100 games, mainly Atari ones. The lineup of games is incredible, and the built-in paddle is phenomenal for titles like Breakout. Most people are going to buy this for the Atari content, but there are some bonus games from Jaleco and Pico Interactive which are worth looking at. Unfortunately, there's some major issues with this unit. The entire Pac-Man section was poorly done. The 2600 version is a 1:1 ratio with no option to change it to 4:3. The arcade version is not actually the arcade, but instead a custom version that was made by My Arcade. I'm disappointed they didn't add any other Namco games, especially for the 5200 and 7800. In general, some consoles didn't come with that many games. You can consoleize the Gamestation Go by plugging it into a TV, but the frame rate is awful. The trackball is very poor quality and too responsive when playing games. I'm in the middle when it comes to this product. If you're only going to play in handheld mode, I think it's worth considering, but I wouldn't bother if you're going to play it on your TV. It's worth mentioning that the Gamestation Go does have the ability to receive system updates. In early November, we would get that firmware update that we've been all asking for. Updating to the newest version can easily be done by going in the settings. It's not like installing a new OS or anything. I did want to thank GenXGrownUp for his video on this new firmware update. The update does address a lot of the issues. The Pac-Man section has been greatly improved. The arcade version is actually the real arcade original with the correct sound effects and everything. The Atari 2600 version is now in the correct aspect ratio. I can now finally say that the Pac-Man section actually feels complete. Numerous other changes were made to improve the emulation. The vector games all have a higher resolution and look better in general. The game Indy 500 didn't support analog controls before, but now it does with the paddle. Unfortunately, 5200 games still do not support the trackball. I tried playing on my TV, but the frame rate is still choppy. Once again, in Night Driver, my car keeps disappearing or the road itself disappears. It's a huge disappointment that My Arcade didn't address this problem. Overall, they did make some decent improvements, especially in the Pac-Man section. I do give credit to My Arcade for addressing some of these issues. There's nothing in it for them, but they simply did it because they wanted to give customers the best experience possible. I just hope that the next update fixes the TV issue. Like I mentioned before, the lineup of games is excellent, but what if you want to add more? Some consoles like the Atari 5200 didn't receive that many games. Thankfully, there's actually a way you can do that. In fact, this unit supports tons of consoles you wouldn't expect, like the Genesis, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, and more. Surprisingly, it's as simple as throwing ROMs on an SD card. I did want to thank the YouTuber Retro Zultan for his tutorial on how to add games. The first step is that you want to format the SD card using exFAT. Then you want to create a games folder. From here, just create a folder for each console you want and then start adding the ROMs. The file types are very precise. For 2600 games, you want to use the A26 extension. For whatever reason, the system does not accept bin files, but you can easily rename it to A26 and it will work. Same thing with 5200 games in the A52 file type. You can easily rename those bin files without having to do anything else. For paddle games on the 2600, you do need a specific folder that's named Atari 2600 Paddle. This is where you add games like Kaboom and Super Breakout. From what I understand, the paddle functionality won't work without this folder. Once you have all the games you want, you can insert it in the Gamestation Pro. The interface is basically just a file manager where you can play the game by looking for the specific ROM. I was hoping that you could add these games to the normal menu, but this is fine too. Remember how there was only Pac-Man for the 2600 and no other Namco titles? Not anymore. Here's Ms. Pac-Man on the 2600. The aspect ratio, audio, and graphics look perfect. I tried a few other 2600 games, and I did not experience any emulation issues whatsoever. The lineup of 2600 games was already very good, but this will make it just a little bit better. You might have been disappointed that the Atari 5200 version of Pac-Man was not included, but look no further, here it is. Once again, the Gamestation Go was able to run every game I threw at it. The fact that we can add games is huge for the 5200 because the Gamestation Go did not receive that many 5200 games. Same thing with the 7800. I tested out numerous games, but did not experience any graphical or audio issues. It's unfortunate that Pac-Man was the only licensed game that was included on this collection because the 7800 has tons of excellent arcade ports. So we all knew that Atari's older consoles were going to work just fine, so let's move on to the harder stuff. I was curious if the Gamestation Go would be able to run arcade ROMs, and surprisingly it does. Of course, I have to run some of the Namco games that I would have liked to have seen on here. Unfortunately, the aspect ratio is a big problem in this section. Everything runs in 4x3 mode, including vertical games. I tried playing around with the settings, but there's no way to change it. This means that games will look stretched, and it did take away from the experience a little bit. I also tried running Marble Madness, which worked fine, but it did not support the trackball. It seems like only the D-pad and buttons on the right side work for these games. Nonetheless, I'm impressed with the games it does support. I didn't expect The Simpsons to run flawlessly, but it did. I'm glad the Gamestation Go supports arcade games, but I'm disappointed about the resolution and the fact that only the D-pad works. Let's go back to console games. The Intellivision seems like a basic console to emulate, but you actually need 2 BIOS files for it to work. I tried out a few games, and while they do work flawlessly, the controls do not. The buttons don't appear to be mapped correctly because I cannot move up in any of the games outside of pressing 8 and 9 on the number pad at the same time, which is bizarre. I can open up a menu that shows me what each button does, but there's no way to change them. Unless there's something I'm missing, I don't recommend playing Intellivision games on this. On a positive note, I'm very impressed with the NES. It ran every game I tried without any issues. I tried later games that support mappers, and even those worked fine. The Japanese version of Castlevania 3, which uses a special mapper, still retains the enhanced audio. I didn't notice any graphical or audio issues with any of the games I tried. The Super Nintendo worked for the most part. I tried a bunch of different games and did not experience any issues, but when I focused on Super FX games, that's when I started noticing issues. Star Fox runs okay, but the music and gameplay is slower and laggy. I tried Doom and same result. Outside of playing Super FX games though, the SNES section works fine. I'm a little surprised that My Arcade's emulator couldn't handle Super FX games, but it's not like they needed it for any of Jaleco or Pico Interactive's games. The Genesis is where things started to go downhill. The games run pretty well, but I did notice some minor sound and speed issues. Notice the frame drops in music in Sonic 2. I tried playing Virtual Racing, which does utilize a special chip, but it runs a bit slower. Surprisingly, Contra Hardcore ran perfectly fine. The graphics and audio were 100% perfect, which I didn't expect for a game like this. Now let's talk about the more advanced consoles. I tried a bunch of N64 games, but I couldn't get any of them to work. Are you surprised? I'm certainly not. I also tried the Dreamcast. Believe it or not, I had slightly higher expectations, but I was not able to get any of the games to work. Even basic games like Crazy Taxi would not run. The PlayStation is oddly specific about the file types that's used. You need PDP files instead of CHD or bin files. Not that it matters, because every game I tried to play does not work. Either it would not leave the menu screen or it would boot to a black screen. Most of these are not super power-hungry games either, Gex and Mr. Driller. How could these possibly not work? Maybe this device is not powerful enough to run 5th generation consoles. You might be disappointed that Atari Lynx games were not included in this collection, but now's your chance to play them. Nearly every game I tried worked perfectly. Even more advanced games like Warbirds seem to run without any issues. The only problem I noticed is a few graphical glitches in the game Raiden. I'm surprised my arcade didn't include any Lynx games, so for now, this is your only way of playing these games. So the PlayStation didn't work, but what about the Game Boy Advance? They're both 32-bit consoles. Surprisingly, every game I tried worked flawlessly. Even the 3D games like Crazy Taxi didn't have any issues that I noticed. The only problem I have with the GBA section is how the controls are mapped. For some reason, the A and Y buttons are used, which are across from each other. This is a very awkward way to play these games. By the way, you can't change the control setup for any of the cores except the arcade. Some consoles don't have the best setup, so this is super unfortunate. Nonetheless, the Game Boy Advance section works just fine. So those are the consoles that I tried. It's worth mentioning that not everyone is okay with using ROMs, but if you are, there's many other options to consider besides the Gamestation Go. Companies like Anbernic have released handheld units that play ROMs. Some of these might be a better fit for you depending on your needs. I prefer the 40XXV because it's smaller and it has a better build quality. The Gamestation Pro also supports your own ROMs, and it might be a better option if you want to play on a TV. While it's nice that you can load your own games, most people are going to buy this to play the included games. So have I changed my opinion about the Gamestation Go? A little bit. In my original video, I didn't mention system updates because I wasn't sure if there would ever be any. I want to sell the product on what it is, not what it could be. But the fact that we did get a firmware update shows that my arcade does care. This update did patch some major issues that I had before, so I'm more willing to recommend this product. They still didn't improve the biggest problem though, functionality on the TV. Until they do, I can only recommend the Gamestation Go for handheld use only. If you made it this far in the video, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right there. And how do you feel about the Gamestation Go? Does the firmware update change your opinion about the product? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.